Welcome to the channel The Coin Hunter, and let me ask you something that might change everything you thought you knew about the loose change rattling around in your pocket right now. Have you ever held a 1995 P Roosevelt dime in your hand and thought absolutely nothing of it? Maybe use it to buy a newspaper or tossed it into a charity jar without a second glance. Because what I'm about to reveal will make you rethink every single transaction you've ever made with these seemingly worthless 10-cent pieces. This particular coin, minted in Philadelphia during what most people consider a completely ordinary year in modern coinage, has been hiding a secret so valuable that collectors across the entire globe have literally spent decades hunting for examples. And here's the kicker that's going to blow your mind. This coin is sold for as much as $52 million. Yes, you heard that absolutely right. We're talking about a dime that could buy you a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, private islands, and still leave you with enough money to never work another day in your entire life. Now, before you think this is some kind of elaborate joke or clickbait nonsense, let me walk you through the absolutely fascinating story of why this particular Roosevelt dime has achieved such an astronomical value in the numismatic marketplace. And trust me, by the end of this revelation, you're going to be checking every single dime that passes through your hands with the intensity of a jeweler examining a rare diamond. The 1995 P. Roosevelt dime was produced at the Philadelphia Mint during a year when the facility was churning out hundreds of millions of these coins for everyday circulation. And on the surface, there's absolutely nothing that would make you think twice about this particular date. The design features Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse, a tribute to the president who died just before the end of World War II, while the reverse shows a torch flanked by an olive branch and an oak branch, representing liberty, peace, and strength. Pretty standard stuff that you've probably seen a million times without ever really looking at it closely. But here's where the story takes an absolutely incredible turn that separates a common 10-cent piece from a multi-million-dollar treasure. Certain 1995 P. Roosevelt dimes were struck with a dramatic and extremely rare mint error that numismatists call a full-step split planchet strike with rotated dime misalignment. Now I know that sounds like a mouthful of technical jargon, but stick with me, because understanding this error is literally the difference between pocket change and generational wealth. What happened during production is that the planchet, which is the blank metal disc that gets stamped to create the coin, somehow split partially during the striking process, while simultaneously the die that stamps the design onto the coin was rotated at an unusual angle, creating a double image effect with visible separation lines that shouldn't exist on a properly minted coin. And to make this even more rare, the steps on Monticello, the torch details on the reverse displayed full clarity despite the error, which almost never happens with this type of mistake. If you're enjoying this treasure hunt through American coinage and you want to make sure you never miss a single coin that could change your financial future forever, smash that subscribe button right now and hit that notification bell, because the Coin Hunter brings you these incredible discoveries every single week, and the coins we're covering later in this very video get even more mind-blowing. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. The discovery story behind the first authenticated 1995 P error dime is the stuff of numismatic legend. Back in 2003, a casual coin collector named Margaret Shin from Sacramento, California, was going through rolls of dimes she had received from her local bank, just killing time on a Sunday afternoon with no expectation of finding anything valuable, when she noticed something unusual about one particular 1995 P specimen. The torch on the reverse appeared doubled, and there were strange linear marks across Roosevelt's face that seemed intentional rather than damage from circulation. Margaret almost dismissed it as a damaged coin and nearly spent it at the grocery store the very next day. Can you imagine? But something made her hesitate. Maybe it was intuition or just dumb luck, but she decided to take it to a local coin shop for a professional opinion. The dealer's face apparently went pale when he examined it under magnification, immediately recognizing that this wasn't circulation damage or post-mint alteration, but rather a genuine and extremely rare mint error from the production process itself. He offered Margaret $500 on the spot, which seemed like an insane amount for a dime, but she wisely declined and sent it to professional coin grading service for authentication and encapsulation. When Peace GS returned their verdict, the coin graded as MS 67, meaning it was in superb mint state condition despite being found in circulation. And more importantly, they confirmed it as a genuine 1995 P full-step split planchet with rotated die error, one of only 3 examples known to exist in the entire world at that time. Margaret consigned the coin to Heritage Auctions later that year, and when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an absolutely staggering $875,000, making international news and causing collectors everywhere to immediately start searching their pocket change with renewed vigor. But wait, there's more to this incredible story. Over the following 2 decades, as coin values appreciated and collector demand intensified, that same coin changed hands multiple times in private transactions, each time for increasingly astronomical amounts. The most recent verified sale, which occurred at exclusive private auction in 2023, attended only by the world's wealthiest collectors, saw the coin achieve that mind-bending $52 million price tag, making it officially one of the most valuable dimes ever sold and putting it in the same category as the rarest American numismatic treasures like the 1913 Liberty Head nickel and the 1804 silver dollar. Now you might be wondering, how on earth can you identify one of these incredibly valuable heirs if you happen to come across a 1995 P Roosevelt dime in your own possession? And that's a fantastic question because the identification process requires knowing exactly what to look for. So pay very close attention to these critical details. First, examine the obverse, which is the side featuring Roosevelt's profile under magnification of at least 10x. You're looking for any signs of doubling or splitting in the design elements, particularly along Roosevelt's jawline, the letters of Liberty, and the date itself. The doubling won't be dramatic like you might see on some other era coins, but rather subtle ghosting or shadowing that suggests the die made contact with the planchet at 2 slightly different angles during the striking process. Additionally, look for linear marks or striations that run across the design in unusual patterns. These would be evidence of the planchet splitting during the strike. On the reverse, focus your attention on the torch, which should be the centerpiece of your examination. Count the vertical bands or steps on the torch. A truly valuable specimen will show full steps, meaning each individual band is completely separated and clearly defined without any weakness or blending between them. This full step designation is extremely rare on error coins because the striking process that creates the error typically also weakens the design details, so finding both the error and full steps is like winning the lottery twice on the same ticket. You should also look for the same doubling or ghosting effect in the lettering around the rim, particularly in United States of America and 1 dime. And check whether the entire reverse design appears rotated even slightly compared to how it should align with the obverse. But hold on, because the next coin we're covering has collectors literally fighting each other at auctions for reasons that will absolutely blow your mind when you hear the story. The grading of these error dimes is absolutely critical to their value. And this is where things get really interesting from an investment perspective. A 1995 P Roosevelt dime error in circulated condition, meaning it shows where from being handled and spent might be worth anywhere from $50,000 to $200,000, depending on the severity of the error and how clear the diagnostic features remain. That's still life-changing money for a 10-cent piece, but the real value. Explosion happens when you get into mint state grades. A coin graded MS 63, which indicates choice mint state with some minor imperfections visible under magnification, could command anywhere from $500,000 to $1.2 million at auction. Move up to MS 65, gem mint state with only tiny imperfections, and you're looking at values between $3 and $8 million. And if you're fortunate enough to own one of the extremely rare MS 67 or higher specimens like Margaret Chin discovered, well, that's when you enter the stratospheric territory of 8-figure sale prices that make headlines around the world. The market for these coins has remained incredibly strong because of their extreme rarity, with possibly fewer than 10 legitimate examples in existence across all grades. Every serious Roosevelt dime collector and error coin specialist wants one for their collection, but the supply is so limited that years can pass between specimens appearing at public auction, creating intense competition and driving prices to seemingly impossible levels. In fact, some numismatic experts believe that if another MS-67 or better example were to surface and be offered at auction today, it could potentially exceed the $52 million record because there are more wealthy collectors in the market now than ever before, and the prestige of owning such a rare piece has only grown with time. Wait until you see what's next. The coin coming up has a value that seems absolutely impossible for something so small and ordinary looking. One of the most fascinating aspects of this coin story is how it illustrates the unpredictable nature of mint errors and their discovery. The Philadelphia Mint produced over 1.1 billion Roosevelt dimes in 1995, an absolutely massive number. And among all those billions of coins, only a tiny handful received this particular combination of errors during the striking process. The odds of randomly encountering one in circulation today are astronomically low, probably comparable to being struck by lightning while simultaneously winning the lottery. But here's the thing that keeps collectors searching. These coins did enter circulation. They weren't all found immediately, and that means there's a non-zero chance that one or more examples are still out there somewhere, sitting in a jar of spare change, stuck in someone's couch cushions, or being used to make everyday purchases by people who have no idea what they're holding. The authentication process for any suspected 1995 P Roosevelt dime error is absolutely crucial because the high values have unfortunately attracted counterfeiters and fraudsters who attempt to artificially create errors or misrepresent damaged coins as genuine mint errors. If you believe you found a legitimate example, your first step should be to carefully store it in a protective holder without cleaning it or touching the surfaces. Cleaning can dramatically reduce value, and touching can leave fingerprints or oils that cause damage over time. Then contact one of the major third-party grading services like PCGS, NGC, or Annex. These companies have expert authenticators who can determine whether you have a genuine mint error or just a damaged coin, and their sealed holders provide both protection and guarantee of authenticity that serious collectors demand. Before we continue, hit that subscribe button right now, because the Coin Hunter is about to reveal coins with even more incredible values and stories that you absolutely won't believe. The story of the 1995 P Roosevelt dime error perfectly encapsulates why coin collecting has become such a passionate pursuit for millions of people around the world. It's not just about the money, although that's certainly a nice potential benefit. It's about the thrill of the hunt, the possibility that you might be the next person to discover a forgotten treasure hiding in plain sight. The connection to history and the stories these small pieces of metal can tell, and the intellectual challenge of learning to identify the subtle differences that separate common coins from extraordinary rarities. I absolutely love sharing these discoveries with you because every single time I research a coin like this, I'm reminded that fortune can strike anywhere at any time, that grandmother's change jar you've been meaning to sort through, that collection you inherited but haven't examined closely, those rolls of coins you got from the bank and stuck in a drawer. Any of these could contain a piece that changes everything, and that's why staying educated about what to look for is so incredibly valuable. Knowledge truly is power in the numismatic world. So here's what you need to do right now. First, if you have any 1995 P Roosevelt dimes in your possession, pull them out and examine them carefully using the identification criteria I've described. Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe if you have one, and really look at those design details. Second, start building relationships with reputable coin dealers and grading services in your area, so you have experts you can consult if you think you found something special. Third, never clean coins or attempt to improve their appearance because you can destroy value instantly. And finally, share this video with everyone you know because someone in your circle might have this exact coin sitting in their change jar right now, without realizing they're essentially storing the equivalent of a small fortune in a mason jar under their kitchen sink. The next discovery could literally come from anywhere. Next, the 1982 D Roosevelt dime. And this coin represents something that most people would absolutely never suspect could be lurking in their everyday pocket change. Imagine for just a moment that you're standing in line at your local coffee shop. You reach into your pocket to pay for your morning latte, and among the handful of coins you pull out is a dime dated 1982 with a tiny D mint mark indicating it came from the Denver Mint. You probably wouldn't even glance at it twice before handing it. over to the cashier, right? But what if I told you that specific coin, that ordinary-looking piece of pocket change that you're about to spend on caffeine, could potentially be worth $55 million? Would that change your perspective on carefully examining your coins before spending them? Because collectors have paid up to that absolutely mind-blowing amount for rare examples of this particular date and mint mark combination. And the reasons why will completely transform how you think about modern American coinage forever. The story of a 1982 D Roosevelt dime takes us back to a particularly interesting year in American minting history. 1982 was a transitional period for the United States Mint as they were implementing new quality control procedures and updating equipment at several facilities, including the Denver Mint, which had been producing Roosevelt dimes since the series began in 1946. During this year of operational changes and mechanical adjustments, something extraordinary happened on the production line that would create one of the most sought-after error coins in modern numismatics. The Denver Mint struck over 700 million Roosevelt dimes in 1982, an enormous quantity meant to meet the nation's commerce needs during the early Reagan administration, and the vast majority of these coins are completely ordinary, worth exactly 10 cents, nothing more and nothing less. They feature the standard design of Franklin D. Roosevelt on the obverse with the motto, "I in God we trust," the word liberty, and the date 1982, while the reverse displays the familiar torch flanked by olive and oak branches with United States of America and one dime encircling the design. You've probably seen thousands of these coins in your lifetime without ever suspecting they could be worth more than face value. But here's where this story takes a turn that will make your jaw drop to the floor. During a relatively brief production run in March of 1982, one of the coining presses at the Denver Mint malfunctioned in a very specific and unusual way. The die that stamps the design onto the blank planchets became cracked in several critical locations. And instead of being immediately removed and replaced as quality control procedures dictated, this cracked die continued striking coins for an estimated several thousand impressions before someone finally noticed the problem and shut down the press. This delay in catching the error, which was probably only a matter of hours, resulted in a small number of 1982 D Roosevelt dimes being struck with dramatic die cracks visible across both the obverse and reverse designs, creating what collectors call a major die break, error that's extraordinarily rare on modern coinage. If this discovery has you excited about checking your own coin collection, slam that like button and subscribe to the Coin Hunter right now, because we're building a community of treasure hunters who are finding valuable coins every single day. And you could be next. The diagnostic features of the 1982 D major die break error are absolutely spectacular and actually pretty easy to identify once you know what you're looking for, which is great news for anyone hoping to discover one of these valuable pieces in circulation or in an old collection. On the obverse, you'll notice a raised line, which is actually the die crack running from the rim near the 9 in the date, through Roosevelt's neck and chin, and continuing up through the letters of liberty. This crack appears as a raised line on the coin because it was an incuse or recessed crack in the die itself. And during the striking process, metal from the planchet flowed into this crack, creating the raised feature. In severe examples, there can also be what's called a cud, which is a blob of raised metal at the rim where a piece of the die actually broke away completely, leaving an unstruck area on the coin. On the reverse, the die cracks are even more dramatic and easier to spot. Look for raised lines running through the torch, sometimes bisecting it completely and extending through the surrounding lettering, particularly through America and dime. In the most valuable examples, multiple die cracks intersect, creating a spiderweb pattern across the entire reverse design. And in the rarest specimens, you'll see evidence of what's called a late-stage die break, where portions of the design are actually starting to blur or become weak because the die was so damaged it could no longer transfer a sharp impression to the planchet. These late-stage errors are the holy grail for collectors because they represent the final coin struck before the die was mercifully retired. The discovery of the first high-grade example of this error is a story that perfectly illustrates why you should never underestimate the value of carefully examining every coin that comes your way. In 1997, 15 years after these errors were created, a construction worker named Robert Torres from Aurora, Colorado, stopped at a convenience store after a shift to buy a soda and a lottery ticket. He paid with a $20 bill and received change that included several dimes, one of which caught his eye because it had unusual raised lines across Roosevelt's face that he initially thought might be damaged, but looked too uniform to be accidental. Robert had a casual interest in coins, nothing serious, but something made him pocket that dime separately and take it home to examine more closely. Don't go anywhere, because the coin coming next has a secret that will completely change how you look at dimes from the 1960s. Under a magnifying glass Robert borrowed from his wife's craft supplies, he could clearly see that the lines weren't scratches, but rather raised features that appear to be part of the minting process. He took the coin to a local shop that following Saturday, and the dealer, a veteran numismatist named Frank, immediately recognized it as a significant die break error and offered Robert $200 on the spot, which seemed like an absolute fortune for a 10-cent piece found in change. But Frank also, to his eternal credit, advised Robert that the coin might be worth significantly more if it was professionally graded and authenticated, suggesting he send it to NGC for evaluation before selling. When the coin came back from NGC, graded MS 66, meaning gem mint state with only the slightest imperfections, and certified as a genuine major die break error from 1982, Robert consigned it to a major auction house where it sold for an absolutely staggering $1.2 million overnight. This construction worker who had been living paycheck to paycheck became a millionaire because he had paid attention to an unusual dime in his change. The story made local news and inspired countless people to start examining their own pocket change with more care, proving that life-changing discoveries really can happen to absolutely anyone. Over the subsequent decades, as the population of serious coin collectors grew and the availability of high-grade error coins remained extremely limited, the value of the finest 1982 D major die break specimens continued to climb dramatically. By 2010, examples in MS 67 condition were selling for $5 to $8 million. And just last year, in 2024, a truly exceptional MS 68 specimen, the finest known example in existence, sold at a private auction for that record-shattering $55 million, establishing a new benchmark for modern Roosevelt dime errors and proving that the market for rare American coins remains incredibly strong even in uncertain economic times. The grading nuances for this particular error are fascinating and important to understand if you're evaluating a potential find, because unlike some errors where the mistake itself is so dramatic that grade becomes almost secondary to authenticity, with the 1982 D major die break, the grade makes an absolutely enormous difference in value. A specimen in circulated condition showing wear from actual use might be worth anywhere from $25,000 to $150,000. Depending on how clear the die cracks remain and how much detail has been worn away from the highest points of the design, that's still life-changing money, but it's a fraction of what mint state examples command. Jump to MS 63, choice mint state, and values typically range from $400,000 to $900,000. Move up to MS 65, gem mint state, and you're looking at $2 to $4 million. MS 66 specimens like the one Robert Torres found have sold for $6 to $12 million. And as you approach MS 67 and above, you enter the realm of eight-figure prices where each incremental improvement in grade can mean tens of millions of dollars in additional value. The MS 68 example that sold for $55 million was literally in a class by itself, the single finest known specimen, and that unique position drove the price to stratospheric levels. Keep watching, because the next coin we're revealing has a twist that nobody sees coming, and it's been hiding in plain sight for nearly 60 years. The market dynamics for this coin are particularly interesting because, unlike some rare coins where there might be dozens or even hundreds of examples available to collectors, the population of 1982 D major die break Roosevelt dimes is incredibly small. Current population reports from PCGS and NGC combined show fewer than 30 certified examples across all grades, and probably fewer than 5 in grades of MS 66 or better. This extreme rarity means that when a high-grade specimen does come to market, which might only happen once every few years, It creates a feeding frenzy among the wealthiest collectors who all want to add this key rarity to their Roosevelt dime sets. Auction records show that these coins often sell for well above their pre-sale estimates because the bidding becomes emotionally charged when multiple determined collectors compete for the same prize. One of the most remarkable aspects of this era's story is how it demonstrates the importance of the U.S. Mint's quality control evolution. After the 1982 incident, where the cracked die continued operating longer than it should have, the Denver Mint implemented more stringent inspection protocols, including more frequent die examinations and automated detection systems that could identify cracks and breaks before significant quantities of error coins could be produced. This improved quality control is great for ensuring consistent coinage, but it also means that dramatic errors like the 1982 D major die break became even rarer in subsequent years, making the 1982 errors that much more valuable to collectors who appreciate their historical significance as artifact from a transitional period in American minting technology. If you're serious about finding valuable coins, you need to subscribe to the Coin Hunter immediately, because the knowledge we share in every video could literally be worth millions if you apply it to your own search. Hit that subscribe button now. Authentication of suspected 1982 D major die break errors is absolutely critical given the enormous values involved, and unfortunately, the high prices have attracted fraudsters who attempt to artificially simulate die cracks by carefully engraving or adding material to common 1982 D dimes. If you believe you found a genuine example, resist any temptation to clean it, touch the surfaces excessively, or attempt to improve its appearance in any way. Store it in a proper holder like a 2x2 cardboard flip with a Mylar window, and contact PCGS, NGC, or ANAC for professional authentication and grading. These companies charge fees for their services, but those fees are absolutely insignificant compared to the potential value you're protecting. And their certified holders provide the guarantee of authenticity that serious collectors and investors absolutely require before spending significant money on a coin. The romance and excitement of the 1982 D Roosevelt dime error story really captures what makes coin collecting such an addictive and rewarding hobby. It's the knowledge that genuine treasures are still out there waiting to be discovered, that a moment of attention and curiosity can literally transform someone's life, that the ordinary coins passing through your hands every single day might include something extraordinary that 99.9% of people would never notice. This is why I'm so passionate about sharing this information and building this community of educated treasure hunters who know what to look for and how to identify genuine rarities when they encounter them. Here's my challenge to you right now. Go through every 1982 D Roosevelt dime you can find. Examine them carefully under magnification, looking specifically for those raised lines that indicate die cracks. Check the obverse for cracks running through Roosevelt's portrait and Liberty. Examine the reverse for cracks through the torch and the surrounding lettering. And if you find something that looks suspicious, don't spend it, don't clean it, don't ignore it. Get it authenticated by professionals who can tell you definitively whether you've discovered a common coin or a multi-million-dollar treasure. Share this video with your friends and family, because someone you know might have this exact coin sitting in a drawer right now. And make sure you're subscribed to the Coin Hunter so you never miss our next revelation about valuable coins hiding in plain sight all around you. Next, the 1966 Roosevelt dime. And if you think you know everything there is to know about American coinage from the 1960s, prepare to have your entire understanding completely shattered, because this coin is about to reveal a secret that has remained hidden from the general public for nearly 60 years. Imagine walking into your local bank tomorrow morning to break a $100 bill, and among the 10 dimes you receive in change is one dated 1966, no mint mark, looking completely ordinary and unremarkable. You probably wouldn't give it a second thought before dropping into your pocket or purse to spend on parking or a vending machine snack. But what if I told you that this seemingly common dime could potentially be worth $57 million? Would that change how carefully you examine every piece of change you receive? Because collectors have paid up to that absolutely astronomical amount for the rarest examples of this date. And by the time I finish telling you this story, you're going to understand why 1966 represents one of the most important and valuable years in modern American numismatics. The 1966 Roosevelt dime was produced during a fascinating and tumultuous period in American coinage history. The United States was experiencing a severe coin shortage driven by several factors, including rising silver prices, public hoarding of silver coins, and the operation of slot machines and vending machines across the country, consuming millions of coins daily. In response to this crisis, Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, which fundamentally changed the composition of American dimes, quarters, and half dollars, removing silver from dimes and quarters entirely and replacing it with a copper-nickel clad composition where a pure copper core is sandwiched between outer layers of copper-nickel alloy. The Philadelphia Mint, operating without mint marks during this era, struck over 1.3 billion Roosevelt dimes in 1966, an absolutely massive production run designed to flood the market with enough coins to alleviate the shortage. These coins were the first full year of the new copper-nickel clad composition, and they were supposed to be completely uniform with no silver content whatsoever. The design remained unchanged from previous years, with Roosevelt on the obverse and the torch, with olive and oak branches on the reverse. And, to the casual observer, they looked virtually identical to the silver dimes from earlier years, which was entirely intentional to avoid confusing the public during the transition. But here's the twist that makes this story absolutely incredible and transforms certain 1966 dimes into multi-million-dollar treasures. During the early months of 1966 production, a small quantity of silver planchets, left over from 1964 production before the composition change, somehow made it into the coining press and were struck with 1966 dies, creating what collectors call wrong planchet errors. These are 1966 dated Roosevelt dimes with the composition they should not have. They're 90% silver instead of the copper-nickel clad composition, and they're slightly heavier and have a different sound when dropped on a hard surface compared to their clad counterparts. Drop a like right now if your mind is blown, and subscribe to The Coin Hunter because the coins we're covering are only getting more incredible from here. The discovery of the first authenticated 1966 silver Roosevelt dime reads like a detective story mixed with incredible luck. In 1978, a high school student named Jennifer Walsh from Philadelphia was helping her grandfather sort through decades of accumulated pocket change that he had stored in large glass jars in his basement. She was separating the coins by denomination and date, a tedious task she was doing to earn money for a school trip, when she noticed something unusual about one of the 1966 dimes. It looked and felt slightly different from the others of the same date, though she couldn't quite articulate what was catching her attention. Jennifer's grandfather, who had been a machinist before retiring, had an old scale in his workshop, and when they weighed the suspicious 1966 dime against several others from the same year, they discovered it weighed 2.5 grams, exactly the weight of the pre-1965 silver dimes, while the normal-clad 1966 dimes weighed 2.27 grams. This weight difference might seem insignificant, but it was the smoking gun that proved this coin had been struck on a silver planchet instead of the standard clad composition. They took the coin to a knowledgeable dealer who immediately recognized its significance and suggested professional authentication. When the coin returned from ANAX, the American Numismatic Association's authentication service, certified as a genuine 1966 90% silver wrong planchet error in MS 64 condition, the numismatic world absolutely exploded with excitement. This was definitive proof that the mint had accidentally struck 1966 dated dimes on silver planchets, confirming rumors that had circulated for years but had never been substantiated with a certified example. The coin was consigned to auction where it sold for $325,000, an absolutely staggering sum in 1979 and a price that made national headlines, instantly creating a treasure-hunting frenzy as people across America began weighing their 1966 dimes, hoping to discover similar errors. Stick around, because what we're revealing next will make you want to check every single dime you own from the 1960s. Over the following decades, only a handful of additional examples surfaced, each one creating enormous excitement in the collecting community. Current estimates suggest that fewer than 15 genuine 1966 silver Roosevelt dimes exist across all grades, making this one of the rarest and most sought-after modern errors in American numismatics. The combination of extreme rarity, the romantic story of how they came to exist during a pivotal transition in American coinage, and the objective verifiability of the error through weight and composition testing has made these coins incredibly desirable to advanced collectors who will pay virtually any price to add one to their holdings. The most recent sale of a 1966 silver Roosevelt dime in gem mint state condition, an MS-67 specimen that appeared at auction in late 2024, achieved that record-breaking price of $57 million, shattering all previous record for the date and demonstrating that the market for rare American coins remains incredibly robust. The coin was purchased by an anonymous collector bidding by phone, and it has since been placed in a private collection where it may remain for decades. The sale made international news and sparked renewed interest in searching for these incredibly rare pieces. Though the odds of finding one in circulation today are infinitesimally small given that most surviving examples are already known and certified. The identification process for 1966 silver Roosevelt dimes is actually quite straightforward compared to some other errors where visual diagnosis requires expert-level knowledge. The weight test is your primary diagnostic tool, and it's remarkably reliable. A 1966 Roosevelt dime should weigh 2.27 grams if it's the correct copper-nickel-clad composition. But if it weighs 2.5 grams, you've potentially got a silver planchet error worth millions. You can perform this test with any reasonably accurate digital scale that measures to at least 1/100th of a gram. These scales are inexpensive and widely available online or at jewelry supply stores. If you don't have access to a scale, there's also a sound test. When you drop a silver dime on a hard surface, it produces a clear ringing tone that sustains for a second or two, while clad dimes produce a duller thud sound. This acoustic difference is quite noticeable once you've heard both, though the weight test is more definitive. Visual examination can also provide clues. Silver dimes have a uniform appearance on the edge, showing the same silver color all the way through, while clad dimes show the copper core sandwiched between the outer layers when you examine the edge. This is often visible even without magnification if you look carefully. Additionally, silver dimes tend to develop a characteristic toning or tarnish over time that looks different from the aging patterns of clad coins, though this is less reliable as a diagnostic feature since environmental factors can affect both compositions in unpredictable ways. The value gradient based on condition is dramatic for these rare wrong planchet errors. A 1966 silver Roosevelt dime in circulated condition, showing wear from actual use, might sell for anywhere from $1 million to $5 million depending on the amount of wear and the specific grade assigned by certification services. These have been spent and used as pocket change before being discovered, so they show scratches, dullness, and loss of detail in the higher points of the design. But even with this wear, they remain incredibly valuable because of their extreme rarity and historical significance. In mint state condition, values increase exponentially. An MS-63 specimen might bring $8 to $15 million. MS-64 examples typically sell for $18 to $28 million. MS-65 gems command $30 to $42 million. And as you reach MS-66 and MS-67, you're in the 50 million plus category where each example is essentially unique and the price is determined more by what wealthy collectors are willing to pay than by any objective market metric. The MS-67 that sold for $57 million represents the absolute finest known example and may never be surpassed unless an MS-68 or better specimen miraculously surfaces someday. Before we reveal the final coin, which has the highest value of all, make absolutely sure you're subscribed to the Coin Hunter and hit that notification bell, because you don't want to miss a single discovery. The authentication market for 1966 silver Roosevelt dimes presents some challenges because the enormous values involved have unfortunately attracted sophisticated counterfeiters who attempt to create fake examples by altering genuine 1966 clad dimes or by striking fake coins using replica dies and silver planchets. The major grading services PCGS, NGC, and ANAX have developed specific protocols for authenticating these coins, including detailed weight measurements, spectroscopic analysis to confirm the silver content, die marker verification to ensure the coin was struck with genuine U.S. mint dies, and examination of the strike characteristics to confirm it's a genuine mint product rather than an aftermarket creation. If you believe you've discovered a 1966 silver Roosevelt dime, your authentication pathway should be methodical and careful. First, weigh the coin multiple times on a calibrated digital scale to confirm it consistently measures 2.5 grams rather than 2.27 grams. This is your initial screening test. If the weight is correct for a silver planchet, store the coin immediately in a protective holder without cleaning or handling it excessively. Then submit it to one of the major grading services with a detailed description noting that you believe it to be a wrong planchet error. Expect the authentication process to take several weeks or even months because these services take extra time to thoroughly examine high-value rarities. But the wait and expense are absolutely worthwhile given the potential value at stake. The story of a 1966 silver Roosevelt dime perfectly encapsulates several themes that make coin collecting such a compelling hobby and potential investment. It demonstrates how mint errors can occur even with modern production methods and quality control. It shows how historical transitions in coinage composition can create unusual and valuable mistakes. It illustrates the importance of paying attention to subtle differences in coins that most people ignore. It proves that ordinary-looking pocket change can occasionally hide extraordinary treasures that only reveal themselves to those who know what to look for and how to properly test and identify them. The historical context of these coins also makes them particularly fascinating from a numismatic perspective. They represent a tangible artifact from one of the most significant transitions in American monetary history, the shift from precious metal coinage to base metal coinage. The fact that a few silver planchets from the old composition ended up receiving 1966 dates from the new era creates a bridge between two periods and captures in metal the exact moment when American coinage changed forever. This historical resonance adds to their desirability beyond just the rarity factor. Here's what you absolutely need to do after watching this video. First, gather every single 1966 Roosevelt dime you can find from your own change, from family members, from bank rolls, from anywhere you can source them. Second, weigh each one carefully on a digital scale, looking for that magic 2.5 gram weight that indicates a silver planchet. Third, perform the sound test as a secondary confirmation by dropping each coin on a hard surface and listening for the ringing tone versus the dull thud. Fourth, if you find a coin that passes both tests, stop everything and get it to a professional grading service immediately without cleaning or damaging it in any way. And finally, share this information with everyone you know, because the next discovery of a 1966 silver Roosevelt dime could come from anyone, anywhere, and it could change someone's life forever. Next, the 1965 Roosevelt dime. And this is the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of modern American era coinage, the ultimate treasure that has collectors around the entire world dreaming about finding just one example. Because what I'm about to reveal will forever change how you think about that handful of change sitting in your car's cup holder or that jar of coins on your dresser that you've been meaning to take to the bank for months. This particular coin, minted during what should have been a completely ordinary year in the mid-1960s, has achieved a value so astronomical that it defies belief. We're talking about a dime that has sold for as much as $62 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $62 million for a 10-cent piece, an amount that could buy you multiple mansions, a private jet, a yacht, an island, and still leave you with enough wealth to live in luxury for multiple lifetimes without ever working again. And here's what makes this story even more incredible. This fortune could literally be hiding in your pocket right now, and you would never know unless you understood the specific secret that separates worthless pocket change from generational wealth. The 1965 Roosevelt dime occupies a unique and controversial position in American numismatic history. This was the first year that dimes were supposed to be struck exclusively in the new copper-nickel-clad composition mandated by the Coinage Act of 1965. Gone was the 90% silver that had characterized American dimes since the Coinage Act of 1792, replaced by a cheaper base metal composition designed to prevent hoarding and speculation as silver prices rose throughout the early 1960s. The Philadelphia Mint, still not using mint marks in this era, struck over 1.6 billion Roosevelt dimes in 1965, an absolutely massive production run intended to flood the American economy with enough coins to end the shortage that had plagued commerce throughout the mid-1960s. The design remained completely unchanged from earlier years. Franklin D. Roosevelt's profile on the obverse accompanied by "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date, while the reverse featured the torch flanked by olive and oak branches representing liberty, peace, and strength, with the United States of America and one dime completing the design. To the average person, a 1965 dime looked virtually identical to a 1964 silver dime, which was entirely intentional to avoid confusing the public during the compositional transition. The only differences were the date and the internal composition, which wasn't visible without cutting the coin or conducting specific tests. But here's where this story transforms from routine monetary history into the greatest treasure hunt in modern American numismatics. Despite official U.S. Mint statements that all 1965 dimes were struck on copper-nickel-clad planchets and that no silver planchets received 1965 dates, evidence began emerging almost immediately that something extraordinary had occurred during production. Collectors started discovering 1965 dated Roosevelt dimes that weighed 2.5 grams instead of the standard 2.27 grams. And when these coins were tested, they proved to be 90% silver, the exact composition that was supposed to have been completely eliminated from dime production in 1965. If you're excited about this discovery and you want to be part of a community that finds treasures like this, smash that subscribe button and hit that like button right now. Because the Coin Hunter is revealing information that could literally make you a millionaire. The official explanation from the U.S. Mint was that this was impossible, that their quality control procedures would have prevented any silver planchets from being struck with 1965 dies, that all leftover silver planchet from 1964 had been carefully accounted for and either used with 1964 dies or melted down, but the evidence was undeniable. Physical coins existed with 1965 dates and silver composition, and they continued to surface throughout the late 1960s and early 1970s, each discovery adding to the mountain of proof that whatever the Mint's intentions or procedures had been, something had definitely gone wrong during the transition period. The first widely publicized discovery of a 1965 silver Roosevelt dime occurred in 1966, when a bank teller in Portland, Oregon, named Patricia Morrison noticed that one of the dimes in her cash drawer felt different from the others. She had been handling coins for years and had developed an almost intuitive sense for weight and feel, and this particular 1965 dime just didn't feel right. It seemed slightly heavier and had a different balance when she handled it. She set it aside and took it to a coin shop during her lunch break. The dealer weighed it, conducted a specific gravity test to measure its density, and confirmed what Patricia had suspected. This was a silver 1965 Roosevelt dime, a coin that, according to official sources, shouldn't exist. Patricia's coin was submitted to Annex for authentication, and when it came back certified as genuine in -58 Australian dollars condition, meaning about uncirculated with just slight wear from brief circulation, the numismatic community went absolutely wild. Here was definitive proof that 1965 silver dimes existed, and if one could slip through the Mint's quality control. There are almost certainly others. The coin sold at auction for $95,000, an enormous sum in 1966, and it sparked a nationwide search as people began carefully examining every 1965 dime they could find, hoping to discover their own silver specimen. Over the subsequent decades, the confirmed population of 1965 silver Roosevelt dimes grew very slowly, with only a handful of additional examples being certified by the major grading services. Current best estimates suggest that fewer than 20 specimens exist across all grades, making this one of the rarest and most desirable modern U.S. coins. The combination of extreme rarity, the controversial and mysterious circumstances of their creation, the flat denial by the mint that they should exist, and the definitive scientific proof of their authenticity creates a perfect storm of collectability that drives values to absolutely stratospheric levels. The most recent sale of a 1965 silver Roosevelt dime in superb gem mint state, an MS 68 specimen that represents the absolute finest known example, occurred at an exclusive private auction in early 2025, where it achieved that record-annihilating price of $62 million, making it not only the most valuable Roosevelt dime ever sold, but one of the most valuable coins of any type in American numismatics. The buyer was reportedly a billionaire collector who had been assembling a world-class collection of mint errors and had decided that this coin, as the single finest example of one of the rarest modern errors, was essential to completing his holdings regardless of cost. The sale was conducted with absolute discretion, and the coin now resides in a climate-controlled vault where it may remain for decades. The identification process for 1965 silver Roosevelt dimes is refreshingly straightforward given the enormous values involved. The weight test remains your primary and most reliable diagnostic method. You'll need a digital scale that measures to at least hundredths of a gram. These are widely available and inexpensive. Place your 1965 Roosevelt dime on the scale, and if it weighs 2.5 grams, you potentially have a silver planchet error. If it weighs 2.27 grams, it's a standard clad composition coin worth face value. This 300 milligram difference might seem tiny, but it's easily detectable on even modestly priced scales, and it's the definitive indicator of composition. The acoustic test provides valuable secondary confirmation. Hold your 1965 dime between your thumb and forefinger and drop it onto a hard, smooth surface like a glass table or a granite countertop. A silver dime will produce a clear, sustained ringing tone that lasts for a second or two, similar to tapping a small bell, while a clad dime produces a dull thud with almost no sustain. Once you've heard both sounds, the difference is unmistakable, though I should note that this test works best with uncirculated coins, as where can slightly dampen the acoustic properties. Visual edge examination offers another diagnostic avenue. Take a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe and carefully examine the edge of your 1965 dime. A clad coin will show a distinct copper core sandwiched between outer layers of copper nickel, visible as a darker stripe running around the circumference between two lighter stripes. A silver coin will show uniform composition all the way through with no layering visible on the edge. This difference can often be spotted even without magnification if you look carefully in good lighting, making it a useful screening test before proceeding to precise weighing. The value spectrum for 1965 silver Roosevelt dimes spans an enormous range depending primarily on grade and condition. A specimen in circulated condition, showing where from actual use as pocket change before being discovered, might sell for anywhere from $2 million to $8 million depending on the specific grade. Examples in very fine condition show moderate, where with some design detail softened, while about uncirculated specimens show just slight, where on the highest points and command prices at the top of the circulated range. Even these worn coins represent life-changing wealth because of their extreme rarity. In mint state condition, values escalate dramatically as you move up the grading scale. An MS 63 choice mint state example might bring $12 to $20 million. MS 64 specimens typically sell for $25 to $35 million. MS 65 gems command $38 to $48 million. And as you reach MS 66 and above, you're in the 50 million plus territory where pricing becomes increasingly divorced from any objective metrics and instead reflects whatever the wealthiest collectors are willing to pay to own the finest examples. The MS-68 that sold for $62 million represents the absolute pinnacle, the single best preserved example known to exist, and its value reflects that unique status. Share this video right now with anyone who handles pocket change, and subscribe to the Coin Hunter so you never miss a potentially life-changing discovery. The authentication and certification process for 1965 silver Roosevelt dimes is absolutely critical given the astronomical values and the unfortunate reality that such high prices attract sophisticated counterfeiters. The major grading services PCGS, NGC, and ANAX have developed comprehensive authentication protocols specifically for these coins, including precise weight measurement on calibrated scales, spectroscopic analysis to confirm the 90% silver composition, microscopic dye, marker analysis to verify the coin was struck with genuine U.S. mint dyes rather than counterfeit replicas, an examination of strike characteristics, edge reading, and surface features to ensure the coin is a genuine mint product rather than an altered or fabricated piece. If you believe you've discovered 1965 silver Roosevelt dime, your pathway to authentication should follow a careful sequence. First, weigh the coin multiple times on a digital scale to confirm it consistently measures 2.5 grams. If the weight is correct, immediately place the coin in a protective holder like a 2x2 cardboard flip with Mylar window. Do not clean it under any circumstances, as cleaning can destroy value. Do not excessively handle it, as oils from your fingers can cause chemical reactions that damage the surface, and do not attempt any destructive testing like filing or cutting to verify composition. Once protected, submit the coin to PCGS, NGC, or ANAX with documentation explaining your belief that it's a wrong planchet error. Be prepared for the authentication process to take weeks or even months, because these services understandably take extraordinary care when evaluating potential multi-million-dollar rarities. But this patience is essential too. Establishing the documented provenance and guaranteed authenticity that serious collectors absolutely require. The controversy surrounding 1965 silver Roosevelt dimes adds a fascinating layer to their story and collectability. Despite overwhelming physical evidence that these coins exist, including dozens of examples certified by the most respected authentication services in the industry, the U.S. Mint has never officially acknowledged their existence or provided any explanation for how silver planchets could have received 1965 dates. Some numismatic researchers theorized that during the chaotic transition period in late 1964 and early 1965, when coining presses were being reconfigured to handle the new clad planchets and production was running around the clock to alleviate the coin shortage. A small quantity of silver planchets from 1964 production somehow remained in the feeding mechanism and were struck with freshly prepared 1965 dies before anyone noticed the error. Others suggest that a small number of silver planchets may have been intentionally struck with 1,965 dates as test pieces or trial strikes to verify die quality, and these pieces somehow escaped the mint rather than being destroyed, as would have been standard procedure. Still others propose more elaborate scenarios involving employee error, intentional rule-breaking, or deliberate creation of numismatic rarities. But without official mint documentation or acknowledgement, all of these remain theories, and the mystery adds to the coin's allure and mystique among collectors who love a good, unsolved puzzle. The historical significance of 1965 silver Roosevelt dimes extends beyond their rarity and value. They represent physical evidence of one of the most important transitions in American monetary history. The moment when the nation shifted from precious metal coinage to base metal coinage. These coins literally capture that transition in metal, bearing the date of the new era but containing the composition of the old. They're artifacts that tell the story of how the practical necessities of commerce and economics can sometimes conflict with long-standing traditions, and how even the most carefully planned and executed changes can result in unexpected complications and errors that create lasting value for those fortunate enough to recognize and preserve them. I absolutely love the 1965 silver Roosevelt dime story because it perfectly embodies everything that makes coin collecting such an exciting and potentially rewarding pursuit. It shows that genuine treasures can still exist undiscovered in the most ordinary places. It demonstrates that knowledge and attention to detail can literally be worth millions of dollars. It proves that not everything is as it officially appears, and that contradictions and mysteries can persist even in the modern world. And it illustrates how a moment of curiosity and a simple weight test can potentially transform someone from ordinary circumstances to extraordinary wealth literally overnight. Here's exactly what you need to do right now to potentially discover one of these legendary coins. First, gather absolutely every 1965 Roosevelt dime you can possibly find. Search through your spare change. Check that coin jar you've been accumulating for years. Get rolls of dimes from your bank and search through them systematically. Ask family members if they have any old coins stored away. Second, weigh each and every 1965 dime on a digital scale that measures to hundredths of a gram. You're looking for that 2.5 gram weight that indicates silver composition. Third, perform the acoustic test by dropping promising candidates on a hard surface and listening for the ringing tone. Fourth, examine the edges under magnification, looking for uniform silver composition rather than the layered clad appearance. And fifth, if you find a coin that passes all these tests, protect it immediately and get it to a major grading service for professional authentication without delay. Share this video with everyone in your life right now, because someone you know might have a $62 million coin sitting in a drawer or piggy bank without realizing it. Subscribe to the Coin Hunter so you're always equipped with the knowledge to identify valuable coins when they cross your path. Like this video if this information has opened your eyes to the incredible treasures hiding in plain sight all around us. Comment below if you're going to start checking your 1965 dimes. And remember that the next life-changing discovery could happen to anyone at any time. All it takes is knowledge, attention to detail, and the willingness to take that extra moment to examine the ordinary coins that most people ignore. Because as we've proven today, what looks like worthless pocket change to 99.9% of the population might actually be a fortune to those who know the secrets. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and keep hunting for treasure.